My manager tried to steal my biggest client on a Friday afternoon, and he made one enormous mistake. He did it while I still had the client's number in my phone. It was 4 o'clock. I was on a call. He walked over, dropped a letter on the edge of my desk, tapped it twice with 2 fingers like he was feeding a fish, and walked off before I could say anything. I finished my call. Then I read the letter. Company letterhead. Following a strategic review of client relationships, the Henderson account will move to senior management oversight, effective immediately. Senior management. That was Neil, my manager. He'd been here 8 months. The Henderson account was mine. I need you to understand what that means. I brought it in 3 years ago. I grew it from a £40,000 contract to a £220,000 retainer. I was the one on the phone at 7 in the evening when their MD had a crisis. Jonathan Henderson sent me a bottle of wine every Christmas. Neil had been to 2 Henderson meetings in 8 months, both as an observer, both because I invited him. And that very day, Neil had taken Jonathan out for a 3-hour lunch, without telling me. I looked at the letter. I looked at the clock. 4:15 on a Friday. Neil had dropped this on me and was clearly planning to stroll off into his weekend while I stewed. So I picked up my phone and I called Jonathan Henderson. Neil's office door was open. He was still there. Jonathan answered on the second ring, all warmth, expecting a chat. "Jonathan," I said, nice and clearly, "I've got a letter here saying the account's being moved to Neil. He says that came from your conversation at lunch today." A pause. "That's not quite what I said," Jonathan said slowly, and down the corridor, Neil's door, which had been open, went very still. "What did you say?" I asked. "I said it might be nice to have someone senior sit in on the annual review," Jonathan said. "That's all. I certainly didn't ask for anyone to be moved. Why would I? You run the account." "Thanks, Jonathan," I said. "Sorry to bother you on a Friday." I hung up. And I looked up, and Neil was standing in the doorway of his office looking at the carpet, which is exactly where a man looks when the story he built has just been contradicted out loud in an open-plan office. He came over. He started talking fast. "It's a misunderstanding," he said. "Jonathan seemed really keen at lunch. I genuinely thought I was doing the right thing for the account." I let him finish. I didn't interrupt. I've learned that the more room you give someone in a moment like that, the more they'll fill it with things they'll regret. When he ran out of words, I said, "I'm going to need to talk to HR on Monday." "That's really not necessary," he said, fast. "I think it is," I said. I went home. And before I did anything else, while it was all still sharp in my memory, I wrote everything down. The time, the letter, the exact words of the call, what Jonathan said, what Neil said, the look on his face. Then I emailed it to my personal account, so it was time-stamped and sitting somewhere Neil couldn't touch. Then I sent Jonathan a friendly note thanking him for his time and confirming our quarterly review was still in the diary. Jonathan replied within the hour. He said he hoped everything was okay, that he valued our working relationship, and that he wasn't looking for a single thing to change. I printed that email on Monday morning, and I took it into HR. HR didn't move fast. They never do. But they were thorough. And thorough was all I needed because the truth was entirely on my side and written down in 3 places. They asked Jonathan, formally and in writing, to describe the lunch. He did. He said he'd made one passing comment about senior involvement in the annual review and had never at any point asked to be shut for the account to be reassigned. He said he valued the relationship exactly as it was. Neil's version, that the client had requested the change, did not survive contact with the client's own written account. And once that gap was on the record, the whole thing was over. Neil was moved off my accounts and given a different set. I got a new line manager. Henderson stayed with me, where it had always belonged. 3 months later, Neil left the company. The official reason was personal. I was in a meeting when it was announced, and I said nothing at all. Henderson is still my biggest client. Jonathan referred another company to me last year, and in the spring he came to my promotion celebration and made a short speech. He said I was the kind of person who looks after a relationship properly, with care and continuity, and never putting my own interests above the client's. He had no idea how specifically true that was. I decided not to explain it. Here's what Neil forgot. The client is a person, not a prize. You can't reassign a relationship on a piece of paper because the relationship doesn't live on the paper. It lives in 3 years of picking up the phone at 7 in the evening. He reached for something that was never his to take. And the moment he did, all I had to do was let the person he was trying to steal speak for themselves. Has a manager ever tried to take credit or a client that you'd earned? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more complete stories with no part twos that never come, follow the page. New story every day.